The rain lashed against the attic window, a relentless drumming that mirrored the anxiety building within me, a subtle hum beneath the surface of my consciousness. It had been weeks, perhaps even months, since the last of those ill-fated dates. Each encounter with Hunter had left behind a strange, almost tangible residue of unease that clung to me like a damp shroud. Even his name, when it drifted unbidden into my thoughts, felt less like a label and more like a shadow, always there, lurking at the very edge of my perception, just out of sight. Our interactions viewed in retrospect had been subtly off-kilter from the beginning, like a film reel playing just a fraction of a second out of sync, creating a disquieting distortion of reality. A compliment that lingered too long, his eyes holding an unnerving intensity that made my skin crawl. Small, almost imperceptible red flags that I, in my naive hope for connection, had consciously chosen to ignore. The final evening we spent together, if one could even call it that, ended abruptly at the curb under the harsh glare of a street lamp. His insistence on seeing me home, his casual dismissal of my polite refusal, felt less like genuine concern and more like an unspoken, undeniable claim on my time, my presence. I'd invented an urgent early start the next day of flimsy, transparent shield against his persistent, almost aggressive invitation to come over. As my tires finally gripped the wet asphalt, pulling away from the dimly lit street, a familiar car materialized in my rearview mirror, its headlights cutting through the downpour like predatory eyes. It wasn't just similar. The specific, almost imperceptible dent above the passenger side wheel well, a detail I'd noticed during our awkward goodbyes, confirmed my growing, sickening dread. It was Hunter. My fingers, surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my chest, tapped out a terse text message. "Are you following me?" His reply was instantaneous, almost unsettlingly so, appearing on my screen before I had even registered the question fully. "Just want to make sure you're safe." The words themselves offered a thin veneer of care, a plausible excuse, but the underlying possessiveness, the undeniable sense of intrusion was palpable, burning through the false politeness. I tried calling him, my phone pressed tightly against my ear, each unanswered ring amplifying the chilling sensation of being watched, of being hunted. The line went dead. I pulled my car over beneath the flickering, sickly amber glow of a distant streetlight. The silence inside the vehicle, momentarily broken only by the insistent, drumming rhythm of the rain against the roof. My breath hitched in my throat. Another text, more direct, a desperate plea masquerading as a command. "Stop! I'm fine." The car behind me hesitated, its headlights cutting through the swirling sheets of rain for a pregnant moment, illuminating nothing but the emptiness of the road ahead, before finally, agonizingly slowly, receding into the oppressive darkness of the night. Relief, a thin, fragile thread, was short-lived, immediately replaced by a prickling sensation of intense vulnerability, a feeling of being utterly exposed in the suffocating solitude of my car. Hours later, long after I had convinced myself that he was truly gone, a new message arrived as I lay in bed. The screen's harsh glow illuminated the tight knot of fear that had taken root in my stomach. "Hope I didn't weird you out. Sorry about the drinks. Next time, my place, more relaxed?" His subsequent messages escalated quickly, morphing from faux apology to thinly veiled accusations when I politely but firmly declined any further contact. The digital space, once a realm of easy connection, now felt tainted, contaminated by his persistent, unwanted presence, each notification a new tendril of dread wrapping around me. Then the voiceless calls came, a phantom ringing from blocked numbers that punctuated the sudden, terrifying silences of my apartment. Each unanswered ring a subtle, chilling act of violation. The flowers appeared on my doorstep a few days later, a vibrant, almost mocking bouquet of roses against the muted, decaying tones of the autumn morning. The card, with its saccharine apology and desperate plea for a second chance, felt like a tangible manifestation of his insidious intrusion. He knew where I lived. The realization sent a cold, undeniable shiver down my spine, the supposed romantic gesture twisting into something deeply, profoundly menacing. It wasn't charming. It was a threat.
I sent a final, forceful message, my fingers shaking as I typed, demanding he cease all contact, that he never approach my home again, warning of a restraining order. The block offered a fragile digital barrier, but the pervasive sense of unease, of being watched, of being subject to his constant, unseen scrutiny, persisted, a suffocating weight on my chest. Sleep became a fractured, shallow state, punctuated by phantom sounds in the dead of night and the persistent, chilling feeling of being observed, even when I knew, logically, I was alone. One night, a sound, so subtle it was almost imperceptible, jolted me awake from a fitful sleep. Not a crash or a bang, but a soft, deliberate creak from downstairs, a whisper of movement in the suffocating silence of the old house. My apartment, usually a sanctuary of peace, now felt porous, vulnerable, its walls offering no real protection. I held my breath, straining to hear over the frantic, erratic thumping of my own heart, a drum solo of pure panic in my ears. A floorboard groaned, a faint, almost musical sigh from the lower level. Then a faint scraping sound, like something being dragged across the wooden floor, the whisper of fabric against wood, sending an icy wave through my veins. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. I slipped from my bed, my bare feet landing with a soft thud on the cold wood floor, a shock of icy reality. Huddling behind my heavy dresser, a flimsy fortress against an unseen enemy, I fumbled for my phone, my fingers clumsy with a fear so profound it bordered on nausea. A text to my neighbor, a desperate, silent plea for awareness, for help. Anything seems strange outside? Call if you hear anything. No response. The clock on my nightstand glowed a malevolent red. 3:17 a.m. Then, the distinct, deliberate sound of my front door slowly, agonizingly opening. Each soft click of the latch, each barely audible groan of the hinges echoed in the suffocating silence of the house, amplified tenfold by my terror. Footsteps, light but deliberate, began to ascend the carpeted stairs, each soft tread a hammer blow against my chest. My blood ran cold, turning to ice in my veins. It couldn't be. He wouldn't dare. He couldn't possibly be inside. The footsteps reached the landing, pausing just outside my bedroom door. The air crackled with unspoken menace, thick and suffocating. A long, drawn-out pause. The doorknob, just inches from my trembling hand, began to turn, slowly, inexorably, with a soft, metallic scrape. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable intrusion, the horrifying violation of the last, most sacred vestige of my safety. The door creaked inward, revealing only a deeper, darker void. But I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I was no longer alone. The absolute, profound silence that followed, a void where sound should have been, was infinitely more terrifying than any scream. I could feel his presence in the room, a cold, oppressive weight, even if I couldn't see him. Every nerve ending screamed, awaiting the next move.
Halloween week at school was, without a doubt, the absolute best time of the year. My friends and I would stay late, long after the last bell, in the hushed, echoing halls of the old school building, helping Mrs. Davison, our arts teacher, transform the gymnasium into a haunted house for the annual carnival. The air would fill with the scent of construction paper, fake cobwebs, and the delicious promise of free pizza, our reward for hours spent meticulously crafting cardboard tombstones and dangling plastic spiders. Chris, a quiet kid from another class, was always there too. He seemed nice, always had a shy smile, and we'd sometimes joke around while stapling streamers. He genuinely seemed like a funny, even cool kid, and he never, not once, gave me any reason to feel uneasy around him. Then, a few weeks later, the whisper started. A group of older girls, the ones who seemed to know everything before anyone else, approached me in the hallway, their faces alight with mischievous excitement, wide grins plastered across their faces. "Maya," they chimed in unison, their voices conspiratorial. "You have a secret admirer. He's going to text you tonight." I won't lie. A thrill, a flutter of nervous curiosity danced in my stomach. Who could it be? The idea felt like something out of a movie, innocent and exciting. That night, just as the moon began to peek through my bedroom window, casting long, eerie shadows across my rug, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Messenger. This was the only app my parents let me use to communicate with them when they were out, a sort of digital leash. The message was from Chris. I'd completely, inexplicably forgotten that I had even accepted his friend request on Facebook during the chaos of Halloween. My heart gave a little skip. I opened the message. "Maya, I need to talk to you. It's really important." A small knot of concern formed in my stomach. I quickly typed back, "What is it? Is everything okay?" The typing bubbles appeared, a trio of silent, pulsing dots, and they stayed there, hovering ominously for what felt like an eternity. A good 2 minutes. The silence in my room deepened, punctuated only by the distant chirping of crickets outside. Finally, his message materialized, a long, rambling paragraph that stretched across my screen. I wasn't prepared for what came next. In a long, rambling confession, he declared his love for me, how I had been driving him crazy since Halloween. Then he detailed how he had tried to impress me during recess, showcasing his soccer skills, but how I had never seemed to notice him. He said he was growing tired of being ignored. The message ended with a chilling, almost desperate plea. "I want you to notice me. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, will you be my girlfriend?" I cringed, physically recoiling from the screen. "What the hell?" I whispered into the quiet of my room. I barely knew this kid anymore. We had drifted apart years ago, our paths diverging after kindergarten. I stared at the message, the words swimming before my eyes. I desperately tried to come up with a way to let him down easily, a soft landing, as I genuinely didn't want to hurt his feelings, even if his words had sent a cold shiver down my spine. I told him I didn't like him like that, and that I just wanted to be friends. I could tell right away that he didn't like this answer. He kept asking why, his messages coming in quick succession, each one more insistent. I had to come up with a new reason each time, a flimsy excuse to shield myself from his relentless pursuit, until he eventually stopped answering. The next morning was a nightmare, a descent into a waking terror. Some of his friends, boys I barely knew,
kept coming up to me, their faces twisted into taunting grins. "Chris wants to kiss you," they crow, their words echoing through the crowded hallways. He had apparently told the entire grade that he intended to kiss me, and that he would do it even if it meant cornering me. Taking this as the blatant threat it was, I decided, heart pounding, to tell my teacher. Mrs. Jenkins, bless her heart, listened patiently. She told me to stay inside during recess and lunch, to never leave the classroom alone, and that if he ever got even close to me, I was to run straight back to her. But this wasn't enough. It didn't feel safe.
I reported him to the principal, Mr. Harrison, a stern but seemingly kind man. He listened with a grave expression, promising to do something right away. This gave me a sliver of relief, a fragile hope that the torment would cease. I feel I should mention that I lived right across the street from my school, a small, quiet neighborhood where everyone knew everyone. And everyone, including Chris, knew exactly where I lived. This knowledge, once benign, now felt like a predatory gaze fixed on my home, leading to what happened next. Later on in the week, the crisp autumn air turning colder, I was walking home from school, the backpack heavy on my shoulders. I hadn't even been inside my house for more than 2 minutes, the scent of my mom's cooking barely reaching my nose, when I heard a distinct, insistent knocking on my front door. My heart jumped. I crept to the living room window, peeking through a small gap in the curtains, just in time to see a fleeting glimpse of someone quickly ducking behind a parked car across the street. It had to be Chris. He must have been following me, his shadow, a silent, unseen companion. My mom, hearing the persistent knocking, opened the door cautiously. No one was there, only a folded piece of paper lying on the welcome mat, addressed simply to Maya. I read the note out loud, my voice trembling slightly. It said there was a surprise waiting for me under the Cadillac in our driveway, which at the time belonged to my older brother. My mom, a worried frown on her face, went to check, only to find nothing. But it was after this day, a chilling coincidence or something far more sinister, that my brother's beloved Cadillac, a classic car he adored, inexplicably stopped working. I still have no idea what Chris did to that car, what silent act of sabotage he committed, but my brother was forced to sell it, a piece of his pride gone. Unfortunately, my nightmare didn't end there. I was constantly harassed by Chris's friends, their voices like buzzing flies in my ears, telling me to give him a chance and that he would treat me right. There was even a moment when I caught Chris taking a picture of me walking home, his phone held subtly, almost hidden behind his back. The only reason I saw him was because I barely heard the faint, telltale click of an iPhone camera behind me, a sound that now sends shivers down my spine. Who knows how many photos of me he had on his phone, how many unseen moments of my life he had captured, turning me into some twisted object of his obsession. And every single morning, without fail, I woke up to a new message from him. Something along the lines of, "I can't wait to see you at school," or "I bet you'll look beautiful today," each one a fresh assault on my peace of mind. The harassment and stalking were only getting worse, a tightening noose around my sense of safety, making me fear for my very well-being, especially now that he knew exactly where I lived, a secret world suddenly exposed. Finally, a call came into the counselor's office, a summons that felt like a lifeline.
I felt a surge of genuine relief, expecting her to tell me that Chris was gonna get in serious trouble, that the police would finally get involved. Anything to make it stop. Instead, what I heard was worse, far worse than anything I could have imagined. The counselor, a woman with a perpetually kind smile that now seemed grotesque, proceeded to tell me with a placid, almost dismissive tone that boys will be boys, that they do crazy things when they're in love, and that I shouldn't be mad about this. She told me I should feel flattered, as this kind of stuff was bound to happen, and that the only thing I could do was to accept it and learn from it. At the time, in my 6th grade innocence, I didn't see the problem with her words, as I genuinely believed her, desperately wanting the nightmare to end. But looking back on it now, with the cold, clear light of adulthood, this was an insane, disturbing, and frankly dangerous thing to say to a 6th grader who was being sexually harassed and who was fearing for her safety almost every single day.
That afternoon, I came home from school, my young mind reeling, telling my mom everything the counselor had told me. Her face, usually so warm and comforting, tightened with a righteous fury. I was called to the principal's office again that same week, this time with my mom present, her presence a protective shield. I remember very clearly my mom's voice, sharp and cutting, as she confronted the counselor and principal. "What are you waiting for? For something bad to happen to her before you do something?" She continued to ask why it was taking so long for something to be done, for any real action to be taken. Both the counselor and the principal remained silent, their faces unreadable, their silence deafening. My mom ended it by threatening the counselor, her voice low and menacing, telling her to never speak to me again unless she, my mother, was present. But, unfortunately, despite my mom's fierce intervention, I don't think the school ever truly punished Chris. To this day, the thought of it enrages me. He basically got away with everything, his actions unpunished, his twisted obsession left unchecked, and it doesn't even end there. One night during the weekend, when my parents had gone out shopping and the house was swallowed by an oppressive silence, I was about to finally drift off to sleep after watching a YouTube video on my iPad, when I heard something. A faint, almost imperceptible tap against my window. Now, I'm on the 2nd floor of our house, so this was especially strange, unnerving. The only things that ever hit my window are birds accidentally flying into it, a soft, harmless thud. I sat up, my heart beginning a slow, nervous rhythm, listening intently to the silence. Then it happened again. A clearer thud, as if someone had thrown something small and hard at the glass. Then it happened again, and again. They were consistent, rhythmic thuds, a deliberate message, and it was starting to freak me out. Finally, fueled by a mixture of terror and a desperate need to know, I got the courage to get up from my bed and peek through the curtain. My heart dropped into my stomach with a sickening thud when I opened the curtain and looked down into the darkness. There he was, Chris, standing on the lawn below, holding a handful of small rocks, looking directly up at my window. He somehow, chillingly, had managed to figure out exactly which window was mine, a secret invasion of my private space. He was about to throw another rock when he noticed me, my silhouette framed in the window. I could ever so slightly see his lips moving, his mouth forming words, but I didn't stop to see what he was saying. I remember backing away from the window, my breath catching in my throat, and then running, my bare feet pounding against the floor to check if every single window and door in the house was locked. Thankfully, everything was secured. When I returned to my room, my hands shaking, my phone screen lit up with 4 new messages from Chris appearing in rapid succession, a final desperate burst of his twisted affection. "Why did you leave? I just want to talk. I'm sorry.
All I wanted was a kiss. Please forgive me. You are not who I thought you were. Bye. I blocked him after that, my finger hovering over the button as if sealing off a dangerous portal. Thankfully, I never had another incident after that night, although I had to endure seeing him throughout the entirety of my school years, from 6th grade to senior year, his presence a constant, unsettling reminder of the terror he had inflicted. The last thing I heard about him was a fleeting rumor. He was arrested. God only knows for what. But the saddest and scariest part of my story, a truth that still haunts me, is the fact that a school counselor, a supposed figure of guidance and protection, was comfortable with telling me that this kind of predatory behavior was a compliment and a learning experience for me as a girl. I just hope that woman no longer works with children and that I never, ever have to see Chris again.
My life, for the most part, has been characterized by a profound, almost innate degree of isolation. Even in childhood, social interactions felt cumbersome. I was always the quiet one, the one watching from the periphery. This isn't a lament, merely an observation. Romantic relationships, understandably, presented a more significant challenge. My late entry into sexual experience at 21 is perhaps indicative of my social trajectory. By 23, I had achieved a certain degree of independence, having successfully moved out of my parents' place. I had been diligently working a high-paying job, accumulating enough to purchase a townhouse in my hometown. It was surprisingly affordable, yet spacious, the kind of place that could genuinely impress for a 23-year-old owner. So, one day I found myself swiping through profiles on Tinder. I matched with a rather decent-looking girl whom I shall refer to as Emily. Our initial date was conventional. Dinner at a local establishment, polite conversation. I was, predictably, self-conscious, but to my profound astonishment, she expressed genuine interest. The relationship progressed swiftly. We became intimate, exclusive. Initially, the constant communication felt validating. The stream of texts, the inquiries about my whereabouts, it fulfilled a certain need, a counterpoint to my inherent solitude. However, the frequency and intensity gradually shifted, morphing into attentiveness, into something more akin to surveillance. The demand to share our real-time locations felt like an invasive breach of privacy, an erosion of the boundaries I had carefully constructed. Her inquiries about my time spent with friends became increasingly accusatory. An unexpected appearance at Phil's house, a public reprimand for a perceived lack of responsiveness, marked a turning point. The possessiveness was no longer subtle, it was a palpable force. I decided in that moment that I had to end it. The decision to end the relationship, conveyed via text, was born out of a growing unease, a primal fear of her escalating behavior. The subsequent barrage of calls and messages, the pounding on my door, the neighbor's bewildered intervention, these events confirmed the validity of my apprehension. Blocking her digital presence offered a temporary reprieve, but the sense of being watched, of being subject to her scrutiny, persisted. A week later, a sense of normalcy began to return. An evening spent with friends, a late return to my townhouse. The quiet of my home, usually a comfort, felt different that night, charged with an almost imperceptible tension. A microwave hummed, its shrill sound breaking the silence, and then I suddenly heard it. A distinct click or soft thud from the dining room. My townhouse looped around in a circle, and the den and dining room were connected by a closed door. I am meticulous about keeping doors shut. The click
was followed by the almost imperceptible sound of the dining room door easing open, a soft, deliberate sound that sent a jolt of pure ice through my veins. I peered into the dining room. "Who's in here?" I called out, my voice a strained whisper. No response. Armed with the biggest, heaviest knife from the kitchen block, I called 911 immediately. I had never called 911 in my life. This was a horrifying first. I spoke loudly, deliberately, hoping whoever was in there would hear me. "I think my crazy ex-girlfriend has broken into my house. Please send someone." The dispatcher instructed me to wait outside. So I went outside, my eyes darting nervously around the shadows. Surprisingly quickly, a police car arrived. I briefly explained what I thought was going on and led the officer into my home. We performed a thorough search. Every closet, under every bed, even the tiny attic. To my utter bewilderment, no one was in there. The officer, though polite, offered a skeptical reassurance, telling me to call again if I heard anything. This, at least, told me he believed me.
My night was, quite obviously, disturbed beyond repair. I ate my food, its warmth long dissipated, and then went to my room, locking the door behind me. I texted all my friends and family about how spooked I was, but given that no one had been found inside, I had no choice but to dismiss it, to rationalize it as just one of those creepy moments, a house settling. I took a double dose of melatonin and quickly drifted off into a restless, anxious sleep. Surprisingly, however, I am a very light sleeper, and some subtle disturbance caused me to wake up abruptly. I checked my phone and saw a multitude of texts from a random, unrecognized number. It was Emily. She was stating how sorry she was, that she desperately wanted to talk, begging me to see her. Then, amidst the frantic messages, a chilling anomaly. The repetition of, "Are you awake?" and "Wake up," repeated over and over again. She had said "wake up" a total of 8 times. I responded, my fingers flying across the keypad. "Why are you awake right now? This is crazy that you're blowing me up at an hour like this. Honestly, if I wasn't sure before, these past few days alone have confirmed that I don't want anything to do with you anymore. Please, just leave me alone." Seconds after I pressed send, a sound, a blood-curdling, unearthly scream erupted from inside the closet right next to my bed. It was Emily's voice, unmistakable, yelling the single devastating word, "No!" And then, with a splintering crash, the closet door burst open, revealing her standing there in the dim light, a shadow come to life. The glint of metal in her hand confirmed the nightmarish reality. I didn't have time to think. I jumped out of bed and got that bedroom door open, trying to escape. Once out of the room, I slammed the door shut, my shoulder bracing against it, holding it closed with all my might as she tried, with desperate, frantic force, to open it from the inside. She didn't just try opening it, though. She started stabbing the door, a furious, rhythmic thudding that sent splinters flying. And then, through the thin wood, I saw it, the knife's blade piercing through the door, disturbingly close to where my side was pressed. In that harrowing moment, a desperate, illogical thought flashed through my mind. I screamed with all the power in my lungs, "Baby, I love you! Stop!"
When I screamed that I loved her, the frantic stabbing stopped. A sudden, unsettling calm descended from inside the room. She quieted. I took this brief, terrifying moment of stillness to call 911 again, silently this time, my phone still clutched in my trembling hand. Through the door, I made up an elaborate lie, telling her I loved her and was planning on getting back with her, just to buy time. She said, her voice frantic, "That's all I wanted to hear. Why couldn't you just be honest with me?" She asked me to open the door. I stalled, telling her I was scared and wanted her to drop the knife. Eventually, she agreed. I told her to throw it across the room so I could clearly hear it land. I heard the unmistakable clang of the knife ricocheting off the wall. Then I yanked the door open and without a second's hesitation tackled Emily to the floor. She screamed, a raw, primal sound, and fought with a terrifying strength, going utterly hysterical, thrashing beneath me. I didn't care. I held her down, my weight pinning her, as I yelled my address and everything that was happening into the phone. I held her down, my muscles screaming, all the way until the police arrived. To my absolute astonishment, the police literally kicked the front door down, the sound so loud it could be heard over Emily's struggles. Officers flooded the room quickly. Emily was put in cuffs swiftly, her desperate, heartbroken sobs echoing through the room. I think the only reason I wasn't crying was because I was in such a profound state of shock. This was, without a doubt, the worst, most scarring night of my entire life. The nightmare didn't end there, though. There was a long, arduous, and profoundly serious legal process that followed, aimed at getting Emily convicted. I never wanted my name or any personal information to be leaked out there on the internet, to end up as fodder on one of those true crime YouTube channels. So, I've been meticulously careful about not leaking too much information. Emily, as far as I know, is imprisoned for some very serious charges. No part of that, I must clarify, makes me happy. This was someone I spent a significant, intense chunk of my life with. Someone I thought, for a fleeting, terrifying moment, I loved. Someone who tried to kill me. She was not, demonstrably, right in the head. And it still pains me how oblivious I was to the escalating signs of her instability, not just because of how utterly infatuated I became at first, but also, to a significant degree, because of my own profound lack of self-confidence. I was so singularly focused on impressing her that I completely failed to pay attention to certain glaringly alarming behaviors on her part. I know this experience, this profound violation, will stick with me forever, an indelible scar on my psyche. And honestly, even if only anonymously, it would feel profoundly good to finally get this story out there, to share this terrifying truth if it's chosen to be read.